here. Really good bye week. A lot of everything, right? Self-scout, healing up, strength and conditioning, competitive reps. A lot of young guys getting reps, as well as our older guys staying sharp and getting more sharp. Recruiting, getting ahead on the opponent, everything, and then some. And certainly getting ready for a very talented, physical, and well-coached Florida State team that's playing at a high level. Statistically in the top 10 in just about every meaningful category. But that being said, questions, please.
Mario, you've talked so much over the last couple of years about focusing on the task at hand, being in the moment. When you're in a rivalry like this, we know what it means for the program, we know what it means, you know how amped up people get. Just how have you been able to strike that balance of keeping everyone focused, keeping everyone level-headed, but also knowing that there's going to be a lot of that, just a lot of hype, a lot of ampness around it, outside and internally?
Yes, sir. I think the best way always is with honesty and transparency. It's always worked well for us. And it's all about the work anyways. You know, there's not a single bit of noise, hype, not a single member of the audience on TV or in the stadium that's going to be able to make a play one way or the other. It'll be determined by those that are on the field, you know, playing and coaching. So I think that's something that our guys digest really, really well and understand well. And so we're focused on making sure that we could do our job to the best of our ability.
They're playing two different systems year over year on each side of the ball. How have those systems elevated their play this year?
Yeah, they certainly have done a great job enhancing themselves on both sides of the ball. Very unique systems that are very challenging, right? From the use of personnel to the tempo to a lot of the, you know, they disguise and hide the ball really well. It's hard to find. And there's so many plays that come out of these distinct formations while making it challenging with both pace, with physicality, and with execution. On defense, they've done a great job just becoming a very physical and aggressive defense with multiple looks on the back end and playing very strong and physical football up front.
Mario, the last 2 weeks, first with USF and then with Florida 2 weeks ago. I know you mentioned it on the radio, but with teams trying to simulate, you know, cadences and snaps, and how have you guys worked on trying to make sure that, you know, teams aren't going to be able to take advantage of that going forward?
Certainly, it's something you look around college football, right, week in and week out, something that you want to eliminate. You want to eliminate pre-snap penalties and make sure your communication is on point. I mean, football is football. The trenches get nasty and crazy in there, and you know, everyone's always looking to get an advantage, and you got to deal with whatever comes, right? And so you got to make your communication processes that much more airtight as it relates to getting interfered with and causing you to jump. So we've been working on that. If we see anything that's causing that on the other side that's illegal, we turn it in, but we don't, you know, we got to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of our stuff and not get caught up in all the other nonsense.
What's it been like watching Mark Fletcher's progression from when he got here two plus years ago to where he's now? And what strides specifically this year have you seen him make the biggest growth?
Sure, I think everything. I mean, his approach to the game has always been strong, professional. The physicality that he runs with is a byproduct of what he is naturally gifted at, being a great running back, but also the fact that he's been healthy and he's been able to train and really work at it. And he has the benefit of running in a scheme and behind some really hard-working, tough offensive linemen and tight ends. So he's, you love seeing the part of him from a leadership standpoint that has really come out. A vocal guy, a always present guy, an uplifting guy, someone who, I mean, you want your own son to grow up to be like him. You know, he's awesome, proud of him, and he'll tell you himself that he's got a lot of improvement to make, and his best football is ahead of him.
Mario, this rivalry has some deep history. You were part of the 91-92 wide right. Are you surprised that people still bring that up when we talk about the Canes and Knowles?
I mean, we always knew this as the best rivalry in football coming up. I mean, as a player, that's, you know, was always a reason why players chose to go to one of the two respective schools. I mean, college football is the best sport in the world, so the fact that people bring up, you know, historical moments and whatnot, it's not surprising. I do think that our players, alumni bases, fans, they all understand how intense this rivalry is, and but I think our players more importantly understand the importance of practice and preparation, and that's what our focus is on right now.
Maintaining the edge during a bye week, the edge of your team. What's your approach to that? Do you like an intense bye week, or just in general, what's your approach?
A combination, because as much as we love to practice and prepare, part of preparation for the rest of the season is to get certain guys healed up, and you still provide them with competitive reps so that they can stay sharp. You still have to have good on good. You still have to have your 2-minute drills, your block destruction, your inside runs and whatnot, but you also want to take some of that contact load off some of your players, especially ones that have logged up multiple reps. And at the same time, you want to continue pushing and developing some of the guys that are right there, in so many different parts of our football team, offense, defense, and special teams, and putting them in situations where you're just calling football and playing football and letting them go out there and play. You gain yourself, almost 100+ reps with those guys. So that was a positive for us this past week, and we do feel that our depth is improving, competitive depth, and that we look forward to seeing some more of these guys seeing more playing time.
All right, with FSU's running game, they've graded out really well. They're doing pretty well to start the year. Obviously, they have a good running back room. Their quarterback can make plays in the running game. Just what have you seen from them on film, and what have been some of their biggest strengths so far in that aspect?
It starts with their offensive line. They're a big physical bunch, real heavy-handed. They're light on their feet. They mix up the tempos. They mix up their formations. They're very versatile. They run it all: power, counter, inside zone, wide zone, toss, everything. The quarterback's a really good runner as well. He's really good at everything that he does. But I think it starts and ends with physicality. They get downhill, they finish runs, they run their feet through contact, and I believe they're number one in total offense, and not by a little, by a lot. And a large part of that's because they run the ball really well.
And similarly, you guys have been excellent rushing the quarterback so far this year. Castellanos can make things happen with his feet. How much have you guys maybe been putting plan to put extra emphasis on, taking care of those rushing lanes, making sure that if you do flush him out of the pocket, that he's not going to be able to take off and run for 20 yards?
Yeah, really good football player, makes a lot of things happen. Everybody has to do their job really well.
Mario, you touched on with them being top offense. You guys are one of the top teams in terms of time possession, just the importance of being able to sustaining drives, keeping the ball in your hands to make sure that you're limiting their opportunities, just the importance of that going into this weekend.
Execution's at a premium, right? Games like this, one thing that really stands out across the country, I might be a little bit off, but I believe that there were over 20 games that were one-possession games this weekend. And several of them were overtime games as well. And that's because conference play has started. And conference play is basically playoff football. Everybody's alive, everybody's vying for a spot. And so the margins for error, the margins between winning and not winning become smaller and smaller. So every part of your preparation and leading up to execution, the details that come with that, they have to be practice, reps, emphasized, re-emphasized, made airtight as much as humanly possible to give you the best chance for success, because the levels just get more and more difficult. And I think that's the best part of college football at this time of year. You're getting everybody's best and you're giving everybody your best.
You can't duplicate what you're about to experience, or your freshmen are going to experience tonight when they walk in the door, Campbell, and what you see. How do you get a freshman like Bryce Fitzgerald or Malachi to lock in that moment once they actually see it?
Everything we do when we're playing an opponent, we make sure that we give it the absolute best look on Green Tree practice field. And Green Tree, it is our responsibility to make sure that Green Tree simulates or exceeds anywhere we play.
Mario, just your tight ends, just your thoughts on, obviously Carson's been trying to get the ball a couple times the last few games, just your thoughts on how they've been doing collectively between that and just in their jobs blocking.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Just your tight ends, just your overall thoughts on how they've done through the 4 games. I know they haven't been involved much in the passing game yet, but just your thoughts on what they've been able to do with obviously the multiplicity of balls.
Sure, yes, sir. They've been a major part of the game plan. Some people have done a good job taking them away. They know we have good playmakers there. They've made, for the most part, what they can out of their opportunities, but they've been instrumental in not only the passing game, but obviously in the running game. And they've been really good on the perimeter as well, on special teams. They're as valuable as any other position on our roster.
And I know you guys have a lot of faith in Carson Beck, and we expect a lot out of him and his mentality. This was just the first time after having a rough game. How did you see him bounce back after that? How did he get back to work and try to fix any mistakes he was making last game?
Like we do any game, every single time we go back in there, good or bad, we assess what we did well, what we need to get better at, and we attack it directly with honesty and with transparency, and do our best to coach them to the best level of their ability and challenge them to get the most out of them.
And then I know Samson got a little banged up against Florida, but came back into the game. Just how has he recovered from whatever that was?
One more time.
With Samson.
Okay.
He went out, came back in during the Florida game, but just how did he recover from whatever minor thing I guess was bugging him?
He did well. He got banged up in that game pretty good, had a great week of just resting, rehabbing, and looks really good, so we expect him to play well.
Can we have an update on Jordan Lau, JoJo, and Riri? The status for this week?
They're all doing well. Same status. They will play at some point in time.
You mentioned, I think last week on the radio, Ahmad Boatman maybe doesn't get enough credit for how he's performing. What areas have you seen his growth this year?
I would say his ability to make an impact at the line of scrimmage in the run game, hold his gap better, use of hands, pad level, feet in the ground, ability to take on double teams has certainly improved a bunch. His ability to create pass rush inside, really collapse the pocket, has improved. Versatility, have played him at the nose, at the 3 technique, the 2 technique, the 2-eye, the 4-eye. He's done a little bit of everything. And his approach to the game has certainly improved. He's at a body weight where he is the leanest he has been, about 300, 305. And so his conditioning levels have improved a bunch, thus playing more plays. There's a lot of improvement and growth in him, and it's been fun. It's been fun watching him grow, and it's been fun challenging him and seeing the response.
Anything else for Coach Cristobal?
I want to ask you about just, for an offensive line, the challenge of facing a 3-3-5. What type of challenge does that pose? Is that different type of front?
Sure, communication, identification, right? Certainly, everything starts with understanding who you're blocking and how you're blocking them. So I think anytime you, especially when you go on the road, right, you have to be on the same page. So, they do go back and forth. They're very even in the amount of times they spend in a 4-down front as well as the odd front. The way they use their safeties, they're very active. They're very downhill players. They're excellent tacklers. And they're complemented by some really good cover guys as well. So that's the challenge, is making sure that you have a plan for everything that they've shown this year, plus everything that they've shown in years past at their respective schools.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Shannon, this is obviously the first bye week you've had, a chance to work with Carson and evaluate, what went wrong, what went right, not only from the first couple weeks, but particularly from the UF game. Just what did you see from him over the course of the last, week or however long it's been since you guys played Florida? Just how did he kind of bounce back from that game and work on improving?
I mean, the only thing that was really glaring in that game was obviously the interception. And if he leads him, it was a good play by the corner. And so if he leads him a little bit across the field, you got a good play, and you got to tip your hat sometimes when those guys make good plays too. And there was a few situations in the game where we just probably need to trust our progression a little bit and get through it. But other than that, it was a pretty solid performance. I mean, it was in the downpour. He was 8 of 16 on 3rd down, which, those completions kept drives going. We were really smashing the ball up front, and so I never felt like through the course of the game that they ever really stopped us running the football. And in games like that where it's bad weather and the other team is struggling on offense, I didn't want to do something stupid backed up, and so just grinding out drives was kind of important to me to just get the win.
How much did the weather impact your approach /
I would say it's a good question. Typically the weather doesn't affect my approach, but when the other team's struggling like that on offense, I think when you combine the two, it did change my mentality a little bit. especially when the ball was backed up in our area, because I knew that their only hope was us to give them something stupid. And so making them drive the whole field was very, very important to me. Like playing complementary football on offense in that game, in my opinion, was very important to winning the game. Like I didn't go into the game thinking any way indifferent about the game until I got there and like it was raining. And so did I call the game a little different? Probably so. But I don't know if the weather, because I've thrown it 60 times in the rain before, and Carson throws it really well in the rain. I don't think the weather really affected it as much as just the combination of that and the other team just not getting a first down, you know.
You talked about being able to grind out the ball, because obviously we saw the two drives in the fourth quarter with the run game just taking over. Just what was it like being able to see that, and the importance of being able to turn to the run game and when things may not be going well in the passing game, to know that you have that to fall back on and you're able to grind out those drives when you need to?
No, good question. I mean, we can beat you a lot of different ways. And so I think it's important as the season goes, because there's going to be times where you're just clicking on offense in every way. And there's going to be times where you're just off a little bit. That happens across the nation. You watch football, and there's going to be times where people just aren't on their A game. Winning those games where you're not on your A game is very important. Like if you want to be a championship team and you want to have a certain mindset, it can't be you just win when you play your best, you know, because you're not always going to play your best. And so ultimately we're built in a way where we can win games multiple different ways. And so the biggest negative in that game was probably we got down there 2 or 3 times and kind of shot ourselves in the foot, you know what I'm saying? And backed us up, and we had to settle for field goals. If we don't settle for field goals on those 2 drives, it's 21-0, and like you feel pretty good with that going into halftime. And so settling for field goals probably, you know, kept it closer than it should have been.
How much do you take note of the other team's offense when you're preparing for a game like this, where they've had the kind of success they've had in the first month of the season, putting up points and moving the ball themselves?
You talking about this game coming up?
Yeah, this game coming up, yeah. Like, do you pay attention to any of that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, because the flow of the game matters. And playing complementary football, that term's used a lot, but ultimately how the game unfolds, it matters, you know. And so when you're facing a team like Florida State, and we know what their capabilities are on offense, yeah, obviously that changes things. I mean, you know, you gotta play to win the game by 1 point, however that looks.
So you kind of got to be prepared for different scenarios that you might not have to have been prepared for Florida.
Why would you say that?
Well, I'm asking.
Why would you say that though, Gary? Probably so. I mean, you know, I mean, look, there's no, you know, it's not a big something to say that they are struggling a little bit on offense, Florida, you know. So, yeah, I mean, when you face a team like we're facing this week, I mean, they're really good on both sides of the ball. And so we have to play really well to win the game.
Looking at their defense, playing, you know, they play a 3-3-5. Just what challenges does that offer? What potential? I mean, I know you're not going to give away the game plan, but like, what do you see from that defense? What's unique about it, I guess?
They just change things up a lot. You know, you got to be on point with your run fits. You got to be on point with your pass game, because the coverage is going to change quite a bit. And so they're going to keep your eyes, you know, focused. And so they're going to change the look a lot. And they do a really good job of that. And so we got to be on point with all of our targeting and all of our routes. I mean, we have to be on point.
Elijah Lofton got a little bit more involved in the passing game against Florida. Just good to see him start to get some opportunities, and then just the tight end room overall. How do you feel the group has done? Obviously, it's more than just the passing game.
It is. I mean,
just how you feel the group.
Yeah, I mean, it's much more than just the passing game. I mean, they're doing a really good job of blocking. If you go back and watch, you know, Lofton got, you know, some good touches in that game. There were some opportunities for like Al to get, like the second play of the game, it got tipped, but you know, he could have had a big one there. So there's opportunities that we're missing slightly for one reason or the other, and I think that as we go through the season, you know, those things will start connecting.
The other night, fans stormed the field on Florida State, and a few interesting things happened in there. You got any fans storming the field? Funny story for us as a coach after you?
Not any funny stories. That's dangerous, really. It's more dangerous and scary on our end than people probably realize. When you watch that one was, I mean, they didn't even, it looked like to me that the ball barely was even hitting the ground, and they stormed the field, and the receiver was still laying on the ground. I mean, it's just, I don't know how you stop it, to be honest, but it is dangerous because when you're in the middle of the field, it's just like people are just coming at you and they're just running full speed. So it's more of just trying to get back into the locker room than anything.
And coming into, I guess, training camp, if you were talking about your offense, you probably would have maybe said JoJo is your best receiver, and you might have even said that Jordan Lyle was your best running back. It's always been close. If this really is the week that they do return, what does their return do for you in terms of explosiveness? And you've had guys that have replaced them pretty damn well. Is it a challenge for you to kind of put it all back together?
No, not for me. I mean, competition is key. If you want people to get better and continuously get better, then people behind them and in front of them have to be really good at their job. If they're not, then they're not going to push themselves. And so those two guys are really, I mean, we all know what they're capable of, right? Now, it's very important that when they get those opportunities in the game that shows, you know, and it will. Those guys have done a great job. But ultimately, adding depth and adding more people that can play at a high level is very important because, as you know, as you go through the season, you know, very seldom does everybody stay healthy every game. And so we need key people at each position and multiple people to be able to play at a very high level. And we know JoJo can play at a high level. We know Jordan can play at a high level. Now, getting those opportunities when they get back is crucial, and taking advantage of those opportunities is crucial because they've had people in those positions making plays while they've been out. And so that doesn't mean they're not going to get those opportunities. They will. And as time goes, they'll get more and more of those opportunities. We're excited about getting those guys back.
And there's an extension of that. So college football obviously has changed now. You got the playoff, you know, with more teams involved, and you have a good football team like this football team is. You're not just preparing for 12 games anymore. You're thinking, you know, hopefully that you're going to have even more than that. How does that affect your thinking along the lines of what you were just saying, where you got to get a football team through more than just a 12-game season, most likely, but be prepared hopefully for more than that?
Well, I mean, depth becomes more critical. And you know, these off weeks that we're having, that's when you dump reps into a lot of guys that haven't played as much as some other guys have played. But I do feel at this point in my 3 years here that we're deeper than we've ever been, and that's an obvious statement, but I feel very comfortable about 2 and sometimes 3 deep at positions to go out there and execute the offense and execute it in a way that we can win a football game. So that's a good thing. Now, those guys, as the starters go, you know, those guys are going to get opportunities. They're not going to get as many as a starter. The starter's a starter for a reason, right? When it's critical times in the game, those starters are going to be out there. But ultimately, when those guys that are the second team guys and third team guys, when they get in there, they make plays, that builds trust. So the more trust you build, the more opportunities you build. And so that's the key. And these off weeks are important too. We do good on good in these off weeks, and you see people making plays. Well, that just builds confidence with the coaching staff. So now when it's opportunities for those guys in the game, you don't feel bad about sending those guys in. You know they're going to go in and they're going to have the ability to make plays. And I feel like we have multiple guys at each position that we can trust. And so if a guy does go down, I think people are going to come in and we're not going to miss a beat.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate it, guys.
Hey, Corey, what experience have you had studying a Gus Malzahn offense or coaching against it?
Yeah, I think this is probably the first time. You know, I think maybe last year, one time we came across someone kind of similar, but really the first time coaching against him.
Coach, for you, just 4 games in, how would you evaluate how the defense is overall, and how do you feel the guys have bought into the system that you've been implementing?
Yeah, I think, you know, every week I think we're playing faster. I think guys are trusting the technique. I think our communication's getting better. That was a big thing we worked on last week, though. Just going back to the fundamentals, going back to the communication, and just trying to be a little bit more detailed in how we go about everything we do on defense, with the fundamentals, the techniques, the alignments, and trying to clean that up.
Tommy Castellanos has obviously been one of the nation's better, dual threat guys, running quarterbacks, whatever you want to call them. How difficult is it to be able to get a good pass rush while also making sure you're guarding the rushing lanes to make sure he doesn't take off and just run 20 yards anytime you get pressure?
Yeah, I think at any point, they run the football really well. And, throw the down and distance out, I think they can run it at any time. We have to do a great job with, containing the quarterback, caging the quarterback, having a guy underneath, making sure we have eyes on him. And it always adds a different element to what you're doing when you have to defend that quarterback run.
Obviously, Ruben Bain's been, if not one of the best defensive players in the country, arguably one of the best players in the country, period, so far. Is there anything that he's done so far this year that's surprised you? I'm sure you knew you were getting a good player in him, but the way he's played through the first 4 games, how much has that impressed you or surprised you?
Yeah, I think, he's been a dominant player. I think what he did this offseason, as how he took care of his body, the way he works, the way he gets the extra reps in practice, how he's gone about his fundamentals and techniques, and then, how he attacks every single day, that's what shows up on the field. And, I think if you work at it constantly on the off season, in the summer, in the winter, spring football, it's now showing what he did in this off season. And I think helping to have him on the edge a little bit, has allowed him to play fast within this defense.
You guys have been really good on third down this year. Obviously, 0 for 13 for Florida last time out. Just in the simplest form, what makes a successful third down defense?
I think last week the biggest thing was, we stayed on track throughout the downs. We had a lot of third and off tracks. I thought our guys executed with details when they were third and manageable. And, I think it's just, every week you get different situations, you get a little bit of a different style, and I thought our guys executed really well within those situations in those schemes. Fourth down, we got to clean that one up. They were 3 for 6. So that's an area, it's 4 down territory. They're going for it back-to-back plays. We have to do a better job in that situation getting off the field.
They do a lot of, I'll just use the word exotic things offensively. They try to create deception. How does that impact, you and your preparation for the game?
Yeah, our guys have to be really detailed with their eyes. Our alignments are huge this week. Our eye discipline, our communication, understanding what the final picture is. Our guys just need to make sure we're communicating and they both see the same picture the same way, whoever it is that's working together on every set play. And, and that's going to be the number one thing is, we can't be peeking in the backfield. We can't be looking at the wrong things. We got to be detailed on where our eyes were and where our fits are every single play.
As a defensive coach, how do you keep that from creating tentativeness?
Yeah, the number one thing is, and as we feel it out in practice every week, it's how do we play as fast as we possibly can. And, that depending how we call it, how we, put in certain things, that's going to be the number one thing is we want to make sure we're still playing fast as a unit. We still want our guys to be comfortable, communicate well together, and then be able to play at a speed where we always feel like we're attacking on defense. And that'll be the number one goal.
How does the speed of this FSU offense compare to what you guys have played against to this point?
Yeah, I think they use it at times. I think they don't. I think it'll be similar at times to what we saw versus South Florida. I think it's, there's times where I think they're going really fast. And then there's other times, they slow it down. I don't know if it's because of the game situation or the score or, what it is in the game, where they do it. But we just have to be ready for everything. We got to be ready to go very, very fast like we did a couple of weeks ago. We have to be ready for them to huddle up and do some different things or not go as fast in certain situations. And, that's something that we got to practice all week. And, we've kind of been doing with our guys, and we got to continue to emphasize that until we get to kickoff.
I think the offense had 25 yards in the first half. Have you ever experienced that as a coach? And then what's the message to your defense once you go in at halftime?
Yeah, the biggest thing last week was playing a full game, playing a complete 4-quarter game. We felt every game we've kind of had, Notre Dame the fourth quarter. We got to play better. South Florida, we got to play better at the finish of the game. Bethune, same thing. We got to play a more complete game. And that was the number one thing we wanted to try to accomplish or emphasize last week as we went through that game. And I still think we got to, we had one drive. We got to do a better job. They went 11 plays. they score a touchdown. And at that point, it becomes a game again. So now we got to, and that's the emphasis in practice. Tuesday is going to be a full, complete practice all the way through. Wednesday is going to be a full, complete practice all the way through. Every situation, we got to make sure we're cleaning up every day. Because we still, and the emphasis on defense is we still want to play a more complete game than we've played so far. And, every play has a life and a history of its own. Every series has its own situation. And you never know what happens in a game. The first quarter is completely different than the second quarter. And our guys, every series, we got to take the approach of, hey, it's play one. We got to get aligned, do our job, have our eyes in the right spot. Okay, play two. You never know what's going to happen. South Florida hits a big explosive, we have to respond. We got to hold them to a field goal or get off the field. Florida, same thing. They start of the third quarter, they drove the ball down the field. We need to respond in that situation and get a huge fourth down stop in the next series. And that's where I thought our guys, are continuing to get better and improving every single week to be able to now step up and get that stop on that second drive of the third quarter. But it's still an emphasis that we're going to have in practice tomorrow. We're going to have it on Wednesday. We got to constantly get better and more detailed so that now we can limit some of those situations.
Obviously, there's been a lot of attention on Ruben Bain and the Keem Methador, and they deserve it. How would you look, looking at the interior of the defensive line, how would you grade how they've done so far?
Yeah, I think our guys have done a really good job, within the scheme. I think our guys are doing a really good job of situational football right now. Moten continues to play faster every single week. From Scott getting that forced fumble coming out the stacks against Notre Dame to Belay knocking the line of scrimmage back and doing his job really well every play. There's still little details that we got to get cleaned up. Last week I thought the 1 4th down early in the game, I thought if we do our job, we should be off the field. It was a little bit of, really all three levels with communication, a little bit of technique. But I think the D-line right now is continuing to play at a higher level every week. And I think, whichever guy you take, Mondo's done a really good job stepping in different situations. Lightfoot's done a really good job, but you kind of take that whole room and guys are constantly, playing faster in their roles every week as we go.
Deuce Robinson, their top receiver, just what challenges could he present to your secondary?
Yeah, I think, you watch what he did last week. I mean, on the perimeter, he runs good routes. That back shoulder fade, he catches really well. His size is always going to be a challenge. I think he's a good football player. He's got a huge catch radius. He finds windows. He understands how to get open, and I think he makes a lot of really good plays. So, that's something that, obviously we got to be aware of where he is on the field at all times.
How's the red zone defense? How would you assess how that's been going for you guys?
Yeah, that's one, I think, you start with the opener. We get them third and off track. They scramble, we lose contain, and we come out of coverage, and, you want to hold them to 3 there. Same thing, trying to think, it was South Florida. We have a shot to get off the field. I think it was 3rd and 7. They throw a tunnel screen. We got to set an edge. We got to get off the field. We got to finish in those situations. We've had a 4th down stop to get off. Last week we didn't get the 4th down stop against Florida. I think they had a 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. They run quarterback run to the boundary. We got to make sure we're setting the edge, and we got to get vertical as we get off the football. And it's one of those areas where I think we're putting ourselves in a good spot, but we got to finish the drive now. We got to finish the situation to make sure we're not giving up any 4-point plays. We got to make sure that's going to be a 3-point field goal, or we got to get a takeaway in those situations. And that's something that we're still working at improving on every single week.
This is college football where it doesn't seem to be as physical as it used to be. Your guys seem to get to the tackle and run through their tackle. They're hitting hard. They don't hesitate. What is your message to them when it comes to tackling and being aggressive?
So when our tackling system here is, we want to press the hip. If we're nose up, we want to bite the ball. If we're coming in at an angle, we want to wrap and roll. If we're out of phase, we want to sweep the ankle. And then we talk a lot about half-man tackles, working our leverage, understanding our leverage, and we want to take our shot. We don't want to break down. We don't want to settle. We always want to go take our shot on the ball carrier. And as long as we swarm to the football, we feel like, the first guy's there and doesn't clean up the tackle, the second or third guy with the swarm will be able to finish the play. And that's where I think, we teach our guys to tackle in an aggressive manner. We want to play fast and go take our shot through the tackles. And I think that's what's showing up on film right now.
You've had pretty good success. I think we talked about this once before the season, but you've had pretty good success with running quarterbacks. Is this guy a little different than your typical running quarterback?
Yeah, I think he's really talented. You know, at any point, you know, you watch him, he's had games where he throws the ball really well. You know, he's always a threat in the running game. You know, it's always a +1 count that, you know, you got to have an extra hat in the box. And, you know, I think he's a really talented player. He gives you a lot of challenges on defense. And, you know, we got to do a great job up front. You know, the line of scrimmage is going to be huge in this game. We got to do a great job of winning at the point of attack, winning at the line of scrimmage. And then, you know, we got to make sure we tackle when we have our opportunities. We got to close gaps, and, you know, we got to win our one-on-ones, and we got to make sure we're tackling them and getting them down. But, you know, he's a challenging player that does a really good job.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.